Yep, another movie to remind me that when California sucks, it really sucks. Hey everyone, TV here. First of all, a little bit of a PSA for you people out there. No, it's not about earthquakes. It's about bringing babies, newborn babies, into a building that is showing a movie about earthquakes, with loud noises and occasionally bright lights. What's wrong with you people? With that being said, let's go ahead and get started on this review for the new movie San Andreas, which is the new vehicle for star Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, which we just saw him about 2 months ago in Fury 7, and now he's back, this time to literally shake the ground with his new disaster flick, in which all of California, and I mean all of California, gets riveted by this large earthquake amongst the San Andreas Fault, and it's up to Dwayne Johnson to not only survive for himself, but also, being that he's a part of a rescue team, he must go and find not only his ex-wife, but also his daughter. And that right there is where the movie runs into its first problem. Because when it comes to these disaster movies, which are a genre all on its own, the thing that we go into the movie expecting is great visuals, at least nowadays, great visuals and great special effects, and to witness the destruction that we can simply just watch from afar. You know, take enjoyment in seeing destruction that we look at and go, I'm glad that's not happening to me, because it's, you know, there is this morbid sense of entertainment in that, because you are witnessing people dying, you're witnessing something that could kind of happen, but at the same time, because it's played out in a very grandiose way amongst the big screen, you take enjoyment out of it, because there could be a level of fun, because there's thrills, there's excitement, there's peril, and that's what you go into these movies for. So obviously the casual moviegoer is not going to look at the drama with the characters involved and be like, you know, I didn't mind that. I go in there for the effects, I go in for the action. And don't get me wrong, I'm a sucker for that stuff as well. In fact, there's visuals in this movie that still had me at the edge of my seat, especially certain things that kind of hit close to home, quite literally, because one of the things that about this movie that gets me is the fact that I live in Southern California. And so every time a character reminds you that, yeah, we're overdue for that humongous earthquake amongst the San Andreas Fault, I get kind of paranoid, and this movie hit that home for me, so I'm like, okay, you got me covered there. And I'm a sucker for the visual effects when it comes to disaster movies, especially the level of effects that we can achieve nowadays, like this shot right here of a tsunami about to hit the Golden Gate Bridge. I mean, stuff like that. It's always an enjoyment, it's always fun and thrilling for me to see that on the big screen. Even though it's been done before, they'd handled it very well in this movie, and they figured out a way to keep the momentum going. You know, it's not just one earthquake, there's going to be several earthquakes, and therefore the pauses in between, you feel like a fresh breath of air, because, okay, you can catch your breath here and gather your thoughts, and then when the next earthquake hits, you can prepare yourself for that. And those moments in this movie do happen. But the problem is those characters, and giving them a backstory that you've seen time and time again. First of all, one of the things that you have to do with some of the characters you introduce in your disaster movies to make them relatable. So that's why I had some difficulty connecting with our characters when one of them looks like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and then you got the ex-wife played by Carla Gugino, and both of them produced Alexandra Daddario, making up the most unrealistically beautiful family in Hollywood. But besides that, again, ex-wife, they're going through a divorce, the daughter's staying with her, and he's like, oh, I gotta go pick up my daughter for the next couple of days, hope nothing bad happens. And then you got the new boyfriend who gets introduced, and you kind of know what they're gonna do with him. It gets pretty generic in certain instances, to where it's almost like this guy has never really seen a disaster movie before. And he probably should have, because, again, certain things in this movie work to their advantage. The action sequences were great. And there's actually a couple of details in this movie that I think could have been played out rather well, but the movie never explores. For one, let's go back to that ex-boyfriend, played by Mr. Fantastic from the first two Fantastic Four movies. He actually starts off as a good guy. He actually has this tender scene between him and what could have been his stepdaughter, Alexandra Daddario, and I'm like, ooh, this is kind of interesting. This is a bit of a change. You're actually making this guy a good guy, an interesting character, and a sympathetic one. So you're like, okay, you know, maybe later on when there's a little bit of a clash between him and The Rock, I mean, we can kind of tell who's going to win here. But, you know, when there's a confrontation between the two of them, and should he be put in peril, you are actually at odds with yourself, because you're like, oh my god, you know, something might happen to this character. I like him. This is a change of, this is a bit of a change of pace for disaster movies. Until the movie literally takes him and makes him the asshole. Out of nowhere. It literally comes out of nowhere. He's like, I'm the asshole now. And I'm like, you had an interesting thing here, and you just had to go for that generic route. There's also this scene involving looters that I wish, that actually made me think of what this movie could have been. There's a scene where his character as well as her get into a bit of a confrontation with some looters, and I'm like, this is interesting, you know, some of that Walking Dead apocalypse type of thing that would happen should a large enough earthquake hit California. I mean, it's something that we see time and time again. I mean, hell, there's riots going on over there in the, you know, Baltimore, Ferguson, whatever, and we see looters, you know, taking advantage of that. There would definitely be looters taking advantage of this earthquake, and we see a little bit of that in this movie, but then it's over and done, and then we're back to the generic stuff of a disaster movie, and I'm like, that could have been awesome. However, I will go easy on this. What does give these generic characters and this somewhat generic plot with some of the backstory for these characters some credence is actually the cast that they did get to play these characters, because they were able to make these characters, as generic as they were able to bring a level of charisma to them. And Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is always able to do that with every character that he plays. However, here is a bit more serious. He's not as fun as he is in other movies, especially some more lighthearted fare like The Journey to the Center of the Earth, whatever that was called. He's a little bit more downplayed in this movie. In fact, he has some emotional scenes towards the end that I was like, okay, there you go, you know. This is one of those guys that was able to go from sports entertainment to actually being a legit actor, and that's why this guy is able to bring in those big bucks on opening weekend. And then we got Carla Gugino, Alexandra Daddario. Again, they were able to bring some chemistry to their characters. And then there's these two British or English brothers that come into the movie later on that tag along with Alexandra Daddario's character, and I like them too. Again, generic characters, but because of the actors that they got involved, they were cool as well. Paul Giamatti plays that scientist in every disaster movie that tells everybody to GTFO, but nobody listens until the very last minute. And he took that generic character and turned him into what was probably my favorite character out of the entire movie. So there were kind of several moments throughout the movie that I looked at certain things that they did, you know, certain directions, certain choices in terms of the screenwriting and the direction and the way that they decided to portray this movie, and constantly I would find myself thinking, I would have done it like that, I would have changed that. The last line of this movie, I would have changed it a little bit. And this is the type of movie that, as generic as I keep calling it in terms of the plot, in terms of some of the background for these characters, it never really annoyed me or never really made me think that it was bad. It just made me think that it was meh in that department. But I did like what I found enjoyable out of this movie, which, like I said, is the thrilling action set pieces with the destruction of California, as well as some of the chemistry that these actors were able to bring to those generic characters. And I wish that the director would have gone through like a marathon of disaster movies, or at least much more recent disaster movies, because I felt like the only one that he recently saw was 2012, and he decided to take the earthquake segment out of that movie and stretch it to 2 hours. Which, I'm not even kidding you, because if you go back and watch that movie, John Cusack's character is going through the same shit that Dwayne Johnson's character is going in this movie. It's like he took that and copied and pasted. What I would have done is made a Pulp Fiction type of movie where it takes place in one event, one earthquake event, where the earthquake it's just one earthquake, lasts for about maybe 10 minutes. I mean, the scientist in this movie says that there has been earthquakes that have lasted up to 10 minutes, maybe push it to 15, and then we time jump back and forth. We have these characters dealing with the earthquake in their own way, but again, not spoon-feeding us with all this information about their characters, just seeing them in their environment, make them interesting, and then we have one character deal with the earthquake, and then we rewind the clock, see another character deal with the earthquake, and not necessarily have them intertwined, because sometimes I can feel kind of forced, but have the Pulp Fiction of disaster movies, and I think that would have been excellent. But instead, we got a somewhat generic, but still kind of fun disaster flick here. So for that, I give San Andreas a solid 7 out of 10. It's definitely a movie that I recommend seeing like at that matinee price. Otherwise, rent it on Redbox, and you'll still have some enjoyment out of it. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys thought of this movie if you have seen it, and will you be moving out of California if you do live here after seeing this, because I'm prepared with my helmet that doesn't fit. I'll see you guys next time.